So you want to know what it's like to live in Vallejo and Benicia, California? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Living in Oakland, California channel. I'm Rich Fleming, your local realtor, and I'm here to teach you everything you need to know about living, working, playing, sleeping, eating, whatever, in Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay. I get a ton of people who reach out to me with questions about what it's like to live here. How do they transition here? What do they need to know about moving here? And I absolutely love it. That is why I do these videos. So if you have any questions, you know what to do. Drop me a text, send me an email, give me a call, because when it comes to helping you relocate to Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay, I got your back. So in today's video, we are talking about the cities of Vallejo and Benicia. And as I always start out in these videos, let's figure out where those are on the map. So if you take a look at a map of the San Francisco East Bay, you find Oakland, and from Oakland Berkeley area you take Highway 80 north. It's actually 80 east is the designation of the highway, but you're heading north on Highway 80 and you'll go about 20-25 miles. You will cross the Carquinez Bridge, and the very first city you get to once you cross the Carquinez Bridge is Vallejo. Vallejo is in Solano County, and so is Benicia. Benicia, relative to Vallejo, is just east of Vallejo. So as you go through Vallejo, you will come across Highway 780. You head east on that highway, it'll take you to Benicia. You can also get to Benicia from Oakland by taking Highway 24 into Walnut Creek, and then taking Highway 680 across the Martinez Benicia Bridge, I believe it's called, and that'll put you in Benicia. So we're going to talk about these two cities and why they have become two of the most popular destinations for people in the last few years. So let's give you a little bit more background about Vallejo. It's named after a Spanish general from the early 1800s, mid 1800s. His name was Don Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo. I'm going to give you a little bit of trivia about him and his wife when I get over to the town of Benicia. The population is about 121,000 people, and it occupies, I think, about 30 square miles. So its population density is just under about 4,000 people per square mile, if my math is right, doing it in my head. So the median price for a home here in Vallejo is $521,000. That's up about 20% in the last year, and that is reflective of the overall just surge in demand for housing over the last year due to the low interest rates related to COVID, and just the appeal of Vallejo in general. By Bay Area standards, it is one of the more affordable areas within 30-35 miles of San Francisco. So I am in old downtown Vallejo, and it is actually July 4th I'm filming this on, and you can see they're having a little bit of a July 4th celebration behind me. The interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about Vallejo is that it was actually the second state capital of California. California became a state in, I believe, 1849, and in the early 1850s, California chose Vallejo to be the state capital. Unfortunately, that did not last long. I believe it was the state capital in two brief periods. The first time was for about 11 days or so. The people of Vallejo had promised to build a capitol building. They didn't do it, and thus the legislature was not too pleased about that, and they've moved the capital. Where the capital ended up going after Vallejo is actually right next door to the city of Benicia. There's a little bit of trivia for you next time you're at a cocktail party. So let's talk about transportation. So you're about 30 miles from San Francisco and maybe about 60 miles from Sacramento. So you can commute to Sacramento if you work up there. It's a little bit long, but there are lots of people who do it. It's kind of a reverse commute, so it's not horrible getting up to Sacramento. Getting from here to San Francisco in your car during rush hour, as I mentioned earlier, challenging. That's being very polite. So it could take an hour to an hour and a half to get into San Francisco, even though you're only about 30 miles away. A lot of people choose alternatives. There is commuter buses that come take people into the city or to the BART stations down in Contra Costa County. A lot of people do the casual carpool. It's a very unique concept to the Bay Area where people meet at a certain location, drivers and people who need a ride, and carpool into the city. Kind of came to a halt during COVID, but it'll probably come back out of necessity. And the ferry, which I mentioned earlier, the ferry has made it very viable to live in Vallejo, take the ferry into San Francisco for work. So, you know, the transportation options have improved here, and that has been a key to the revitalization of Vallejo. So behind me is one of the major reasons for the resurgence in the popularity of Vallejo. I am standing right near the ferry terminal for the Vallejo San Francisco ferry, and this terminal has made this ferry and the service that comes from this terminal has made commuting from here to San Francisco way more feasible than it previously had been. So during the work week, I think these during rush hours they run about every 20 to 30 minutes, and I believe they run about once an hour or so on the weekend. But it really has helped cut the commute time going from Vallejo into San Francisco and back dramatically and made it far less stressful. So this school district here is the Vallejo's, I believe it's called the Vallejo City Unified School District. I believe that's its official name. And it does cover all the city of Vallejo. Like most of Vallejo, it has its challenges, or it has had its challenges. They are making strides to improve it, but its ratings on many of the school rating sites does definitely leave room for improvement. But I encourage you to do your own research there. So now I am in Benicia, California, and as I mentioned earlier, Benicia is just east of Vallejo. And let me hit you with that little piece of trivia that I promised you earlier. So Vallejo, as I mentioned, was named after a Spanish general that oversaw the area back in Spanish colonial times. Benicia is actually named after his wife, and that's how it got its name. And as I believe I mentioned earlier, Benicia was the third capital of California after Vallejo being the second. So I'm just leaving the parking lot here. I'm on First Street. This is First Street in Benicia. This is really the primary commerce, dining, entertainment street in Benicia. It's maybe, First Street runs maybe, I'm gonna guess 8 to 10 blocks. It is very popular. I'll give you a little pan around here. And behind me is the inlet to the Delta, which is part of California's water system. And it is just absolutely beautiful. So Benicia is a very popular place. For lack of a better description, it's considered more upscale than Vallejo. The average price of a home here, I believe, is about $837,000. That's up about 42% from last year. Rent here in Benicia, that's probably going to range anywhere from a low of maybe about $1,800 for a one bedroom, and could easily go up to $25,000, maybe even $3,000 if you're renting right here on First Street near the water here. So Benicia covers about 13 square miles, and it has a population of about 28,000 people, which gives it a population density of about 2,200 people per square mile. There are really 3, maybe 4 primary areas in Benicia. There's East Benicia, West Benicia. Both of those are to the south side of Highway 780, and those are really the older sections of the town. Then there's an area generally referred to as Southampton. That's the residential community to the north side of 780. And then there's the industrial park. So there is a pretty big industrial park here. It's located on the very far edge of town. You really don't even know it's here unless someone tells you or you're investigating. There is actually a Vallejo oil refinery here. It is actually the biggest employer in town. It employs about 550, 600 people. The second biggest employer in town is Dunlop Manufacturing. And no, that's not Dunlop Tire. It is Dunlop Manufacturing. They actually manufacture musical equipment. And they employ about 300 people. A couple other major employers employ a couple of hundred people each, roughly, in town. Benicia is, for lack of a better term, primarily a bedroom community. A lot of people commute into San Francisco, Walnut Creek, Oakland to work. So transportation in and out of Benicia is, I'd say it's more limited than Vallejo. If you're trying to get into San Francisco, you have to go over to Vallejo to catch the ferry. Most of the bus service from this area runs from Vallejo. You're close to the Martinez-Benicia Bridge, but driving is the primary way of getting around town, and you don't have quite as many options transportation-wise as you do in Vallejo. So the school district here is the Benicia Unified School District, and if you believe those online school rating sites, it is a pretty strong school district overall. It's one of the main reasons that people like to move here with their families, is to get access to that school district. So what are the 3 best things about Vallejo and Benicia? One is the relative affordability. That's probably the top thing. The affordability here compared to much of the rest of the Bay Area is a very strong point. The second thing that makes this area very appealing is you have great access to parks, the water. You're right on San Pablo Bay and the Delta. So as I'm walking, actually, you can see the Delta behind me. So that is absolutely a big bonus. And the third thing is it is relatively easy to get to either San Francisco or Sacramento if you work in one of those 2 locations. It's kind of it's probably about the same commute, even though Sacramento is further away. So it gives you options as far as employment is concerned. 3 things that aren't maybe so great about Vallejo and Benicia. 1, transportation, driving around from here can be challenging. Your primary highway through the area is Highway 80, which is just known in the area as a very challenging freeway. Have also access to 680, which leads into Highway 80, so it doesn't really solve your problem all that much. Let's see, the second thing, especially in Vallejo, primarily in Vallejo, many people feel that there's room for improvement in the school district. And the third thing, primarily in Benicia, is just there is very little commerce here. You have a little shopping area on First Street and a couple of strip malls, but to do any significant shopping, you pretty much have to go to Concord, which is about 15 minutes south of here, south of the Martinez Benicia Bridge, or maybe Fairfield, even Vallejo. There's not a lot of commerce in Benicia here. So that's a quick introduction to Benicia and Vallejo, two great cities in southern Solano County. If you have any questions about anything in this video, you know what to do. Drop me a text, give me a call, send me an email, whatever works for you, because I'm here to answer your questions, help you make that transition to Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco Bay. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button so YouTube knows to show it to other people like yourself. Hit that subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you know each and every time I drop a new video. And I'll catch you in the next video.